Welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is The Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. What a weekend it was. Hope you had a happy Mother's Day weekend. With the guy in the White House, I don't know. He put out a happy Mother's Day message. I just can't buy it. Sorry. Anyway, I got to be honest. I spent the weekend fielding outrage from people over Kelly Sadler's comments. Look, John McCain is, he's where he is. I mean, his impending demise is sadly going to happen. And what I find interesting is there's been considerable outrage among the folks with a conscience. What we haven't really heard from are the right-wing folks, the zealot class, the people who are supposed to be our moral compass, the people who are supposed to be the ones who are, the decent, the good among us and all of that. Haven't really heard much from them. And not surprising, to be honest with you. And over the weekend, we also heard Joe Biden say that people have wondered when decency would hit rock bottom in this administration. And Biden said it happened yesterday. It happened the day that these comments hit. And I got to be honest, I like Joe Biden a lot. I would rather see Joe Biden in the White House than the Marmalade Mussolini. But I disagree wholeheartedly with Joe Biden on this. I don't think we've yet to see the depths of depravity. I don't think we've seen how low this administration can go. And as I was thinking about it over the weekend, I was remembering the famous, Donald Trump quote, I moved on her like a you-know-what. He said, but I couldn't get there and she was married. I just start kissing them. It's like a magnet. Just kiss. I don't even wait. And when you're a star, they let you do it because you can do anything. You can grab them by the you-know-where. You can do anything. Is that better or worse? Because evidently we weren't all that upset about it. Is it better or worse that today you've got Pastor John Hagee, who is the founder of the Christians United for Israel, delivering the benediction at a ceremony that's moving the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem from Tel Aviv, which has got, the region kind of unhappy. Are we happy? Is it worse that even worse that evangelical pastor Robert Jeffress, who again, major slap in the face. This is the anti-gay hate monger who believes abortion caused 9/11. He's going to be saying a prayer at the embassy opening. Is that better or worse? I mean, on a day when I agree with Mitt Romney, and I look at his tweet, he said, Rob Jeffress says, you can't be saved by being a Jew, and Mormonism is a heresy from the pit of hell. He said the same about Islam. Such a religious bigot should not be giving the prayer that opens the United States Embassy in Jerusalem. Is that lower? Is that better or worse? How about the Trump administration, pushing this and promoting bigotry and racism and hatred? Is that better or worse? How about, Scott Pruitt and the destruction of our environment? Is that better or worse? Pushing for more police brutality, abandoning Puerto Rico completely. Have you heard anything coming out of Puerto Rico? Is that better or worse? And I keep looking at this stuff and I go, how about ripping families apart by having ICE agents, come in the middle of the night and take kids away and families away? How about that? Is that better or worse? How about the massive kleptocracy that we're seeing right before our very eyes as they're robbing us blind? Is that better or worse? I'm trying to figure that out. How about pulling us out of the Iran deal, which I believe, and I think most experts believe, is strategically one of the dumbest geopolitical decisions a president has ever made? How about that? How about the thousands and thousands of lies every day? Is that better or worse? Or, you can go down the list, taking food out of the mouths of children, giving massive tax breaks to the wildly wealthy, and then going, oh, sorry, we're going to have to cut food stamps. Oh, sorry, we're going to have to cut CHIP programs. Oh, sorry, we're going to have to take money from the ACA so 4 million more people go without health insurance, and they're going to die sooner as well. Is that better or worse? Because I'm trying to find out where our outrage meter is. Where do we get upset? Look, the comment made about John McCain was deplorable. It was despicable. It was flat out dead wrong and should be pushed back vigorously. But I would like to see the same kind of outrage for all of these other things. And then some. These, and I hate to just throw it on the Republicans, but they're the ones pushing this agenda. They're the ones pushing this division, this hatred, and it's not just among blacks and whites or minorities, and it's among classes, it's among subclasses, it's among rich and poor, and it's all of this division where, well, many of us are going to die sooner because of it. So I would love to see the outrage there. Now, I had gotten a bit of outrage from people last week when I talked about this scenario down in Louisiana. Evidently, the governor of Louisiana, Democratic governor, said, look, we're going to have to send out warning letters to 37,000 individuals across the state of Louisiana, telling them that, hey, the budget isn't going to provide enough money to fund Health and Human Services. It's not going to be able to fund Medicaid at the rate that it's supposed to. The Republican legislature is just not going to budget it. So 37,000 of you who don't directly qualify or are specific to the law, who could be with, I guess the numbers are 2,700 people with developmental disabilities, 7,600 home health care patients, 7,200 people with a wider range of ailments and the inability to take care of themselves, 19,000 nursing home residents. These people were all sent letters saying, sorry, we may run out of money and you're going to have to make other plans. And some of the stories that I've read, like a quadriplegic woman who has 3 aides who take care of her day and night. And the only way she can live or exist is by having these people who are there to care for her. And these people don't make a huge amount of money, but they're there to take care of her and also have something of employment themselves. That could go. And then the question is, what do you do with this? What happens to this woman? What happens to this quadriplegic woman? Well, the family will take care of it. Well, the family doesn't have the skill to do that. Do we institutionalize people? Do we go back to warehousing? Is that where we go? And what does this say about us as a society? I mean, honestly, okay, we're outraged about Sadler's comments, as we should be, and she should be fired. She should have been fired the second it got out. In any decent administration, well, in any administration, she would have been shown the door, even if it was just symbolically. This administration is, nope, screw you, we're doing what we want, and tough on you if you don't like it. But where is that outrage number? Where do we get upset? I mean, because I look at this, and I got to be honest, I was flipping mad. I understand Louisiana's 40th out of the 50 states when it comes to their long-term health care plans. They're 40th. That means there are states below them that are worse. And, the reason that we know about this, and this is one of those things where I give the Democratic governor of Louisiana credit, even though the Republicans are losing their minds, is that he brought awareness to the problem that other states probably aren't making their citizens aware of. That these states are going to do this stuff. They're going to continue to cut taxes. They're going to continue to give corporations and the wealthy more and more at the expense of the least among us, because they're the first to go. And I bring it back to the Hagees, to the Jeffress, to all of these people who are the moral compass of our society. while you're beating people over the head with the good book trying to get coins out of their pockets, how about we beat them over the head with the good book and tell them that maybe we should do what the good book says, which is take care of the least among us, take care of the downtrodden, feed the hungry, clothe the naked, care for the sick. Or did we forget that? And, I look at this and it's, again, the morally outraged, the people who are losing their minds over this stuff, don't seem to be that moral compass. They seem to have given this administration a major pass. And, I love some of the pastors who have come out and say, Donald Trump's a godly man now, because he's our godly man now. And all of that stuff in the past, grabbing her by the you-know-what and all that, that's in the past. Yeah. Scary stuff. I got to be honest. I mean, it's just mind-blowing to me. But when you look at all of this stuff in its entirety, and the comment, yes, outrageous, but the other stuff, I think much worse. And I hope we will be as outraged, as angry, and as willing to fight on those other fronts as we are there. Got lots to talk about today, lots to get to. Some more money stories around Michael Cohen. Some interesting little tidbits coming out of the Trump Department of Labor. Evidently we're going to immediately lower prescription drugs. Can't wait to get to that stuff. Lots and lots to get to. Love to hear your thoughts. 1-888-520-RICK, 1-888-520-7425, or email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Going to take a quick break. When we come back, going to talk a little bit about the VA. How Trump was we're going to fix all the VA stuff, all the problems. We're going to go after those bad actors. We're going to start firing people. We're going to do all that. We're going to find out who they're firing when Jasper Craven comes and talks about his recent piece. Quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
90% of the wealth, 10% of the people own 90% of the wealth. Where do you fit in? Take a look at yourself. 10% of the people own 90% of the wealth.
Where smart policy and sound investment matters. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1913. That was the day Philadelphia longshoremen walked off the job. Led by the industrial workers of the world, the strike was remarkable for its militancy, its industrial unionism, and its interracial organizing. The Wobblies had been fighting to organize workers in the city for years. Unionizing efforts included Amalgamated Local 57, which organized workers across whole industries. Attracted to the IWW's message of interracial unionism, black longshoreman Ben Fletcher joined up readily and soon emerged as an early leader of Local 57 and then Longshoremen's Local 8. In his book, Wobblies on the Waterfront, historian Peter Cole notes the origins of the local started with the striking sugar refinery workers on the banks of the Delaware. Dockers made contact with the IWW during the strike and drew up a list of grievances and demands. And by this day in 1913, 1,500 longshoremen struck for a leveling of the hourly wage for all workers, regardless of skill, shorter hours, and union recognition. They held strike meetings every day and elected a committee of 15 with representatives from every ethnic and racial group. Cole notes this was crucial, given the diversity of the dock's 4,000 workers. More than a third were black, another third were immigrants. The committee included Poles, Jews, blacks, Irish, and others. Strikers took on their employers and also the police. Beatings, intimidation, and arrests of strikers occurred daily and intensified as the ship owners attempted to herd in scabs. 1,200 coal and iron ore handlers joined in on the strike. The port was solidly shut down, and by the end of the month, the shippers were forced to concede to most of the Wobblies' demands. Industrial unionism and interracial solidarity had won the day.
defender of the working class majority, Rick Smith.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. So we've heard, all during the 2016 campaign, and since we've heard about how things at the VA have been slow, haven't been working properly, and I would argue the almost 50,000 people who have not been hired into positions that are needed would have something to do with that. There's a lot of problems there, but it seems to me this administration, while lots of verbiage, a lot of rhetoric, not much in the way of doing. And this, my next guest, his story talking about the VA, at the VA, a law meant to discipline executives is being used to fire low-level workers is not at all a surprise to me. That's why I've asked Jasper Craven to come talk with a freelance reporter over at The Nation. He also reports with a partnership with the Investigative Fund at the Nation Institute. Jasper, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks so much, Rick.
So lots of problems at the VA. We know that, right?
Sure, yeah. It's been years and years of problems. No fixes, though.
And I would argue, again, I go back to the large number of openings and vacancies that haven't been filled through. You go back to Screw Quester back, during the Obama years where we were freezing hiring and freezing wages. I think that's got a big problem to it as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, depending on who you talk to, there's as many as 40,000 vacancies at the VA, and that covers all sorts of positions from doctors to housekeepers. So, when you don't have those people in the facilities doing the work, that clearly makes it more difficult for the work to be good work. It's pretty disturbing to speak to some of these really hardworking, committed VA staffers who are trying to provide a good patient experience, but who are really hamstrung and are not getting support from Washington. They're not getting the doctors they need. They're not getting the resources. They're not even getting the funding to just, make sure that everything's operating smoothly, that the bureaucracy is efficient. So
now the Trump administration, they have said that we can't fire these people. Evidently, it's so hard to fire them that they've passed, I think it's an executive order. They've passed something or it was a law to make it easier to fire people because, we need to get the best people in there, the smartest, the brightest, all of that. How's that working out?
Not working out great, Rick. I mean, the thing that few people realize is that the VA had tools to fire corrupt managers even before the infamous 2014 Phoenix scandal, where administrators were found to be crunching wait time numbers in order to make their care look better than it actually was. So there was some tools in place then. After that happened in the 2014 Choice Act, Congress added new additional accountability tools. And that didn't seem to be enough for sort of the most conservative in Congress. And so last summer, Senator Marco Rubio pushed the Accountability Act, the VA Whistleblower and Accountability Act. And basically what that law has done in implementation is strip union employees of key civil service protections and made it much more easy to fire employees without due process, protections that were actually, won in hard-fought union negotiations. So if you look at the master handbook, that public sector union employees at the VA, they're mostly represented by the American Federation of Government Employees. Those rights that are codified in this master handbook are being ignored and have been superseded by this accountability law. So what this means is if management decides that a worker is not up to snuff, not meeting quality standards, whether there's been maybe an allegation of poor care or other inappropriate behavior, they can basically expedite the process and get that VA employee fired or demoted or suspended without pay much easier than before this law was passed. That is not what the law was supposed to be intended for. It was actually supposed to allow folks to push out the corrupt managers, who are sort of responsible for overseeing these facilities, and many of whom have actually engaged in pretty serious negligent or corrupt behavior. Yet, my reporting found a number of managers across the country who still have their jobs. Meanwhile, more than 1,200 low-level employees are being basically thrown to the curb.
Yeah, not surprising, to be honest with you. I mean, and people tell me, well, you can't fire union people. I go, as somebody who was a union member for more than 25 years, you can absolutely. It's called due process. You go through the right process. You go through a grievance machinery. You go through. You document. You do the work of just like you would want if you were being charged with something criminally. You want to have due process. What they've gone and done is they've stripped all that due process away, and they want to make all government employees at will, to where you get these managers who, like you've pointed out, this law was supposed to be to go after their incompetence. Now they can use it against their underlings. So what are we finding? Are we finding any commonalities about who we're going after? Are we going after because age discrimination a big problem, disability discrimination a big problem across the economy? Are we finding that here at the VA?
Yeah, well, so one interesting trend I found is that managers are now able to fire employees much easier based on sort of charges of sort of low quality work. What quietly happened after this VA law was passed is the VA national office promulgated these incredibly stringent new work quality standards. So, for example, on the administrative side, claims processors were expected to basically double their output in the same period of time, which put incredible stress on people trying to process claims for care from veterans, and actually made it so that many more mistakes were made. If a claims processor is supposed to double their workload, they're going to make mistakes, and some vets aren't going to be approved for claims, even though they probably should have been. So with those new standards out, that gave a new tool for VA to basically fire folks willy-nilly and point to these new standards and say, you're not keeping up. We can you. So that's sort of one trend I've noticed. And another sort of troubling part to this story is that many folks that are on the chopping block are veterans. The VA is 33% veteran staff, and many of them were brought in through what's called the Compensated Work Therapy Program, which reaches out to homeless veterans, veterans with mental disabilities or physical disabilities, and tries to sort of offer them a job within the VA as a housekeeper, as a cafeteria worker, in order to sort of help build some stability in their lives. So these folks, often struggle to meet work standards. They, some of them do have histories of, substance abuse, or, are easily frustrated and can become angry if they're in a stressful situation. So I documented more than 10 instances of veterans who, for no major reason, were fired. Often it was because of one verbal outburst that they then apologized for, or for being really stressed out at their job and expressing that maybe not in the most diplomatic way to their supervisors. So that's what's sort of the cruel irony in this, is that veterans themselves are being fired under a law that's supposed to help veterans. So, and these are some of our country's most vulnerable veterans.
I mean, I got to be honest. I hear this, and while I'm outraged and I'm angry, and I find this much worse than the Kelly Sadler comments, because I've been asking that question. All of these other things, we should be getting outraged about, because there's tons of outrage over this woman's comments. This is one of those things that I find much more outrageous, but not surprising, because these are people who told us that they were going to run government like a business, and this, unfortunately, is what the private sector does. They churn people out, and your problems be damned, there's the curb for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's unclear what's going to happen if these firings are going to continue at this fast clip. I mean, it's been less than a year, and there's been 1,200 firings of low-level employees. That's a pretty significant number.
Wow.
And especially at an agency with tens of thousands of vacancies. So what I fear is that this, was sort of a cynically drafted law that will basically continue to gut the VA employees until another scandal erupts and privatization at the VA becomes even more palatable, and some new legislation pops up. So it's hard to know what will happen next, but I'm sure more VA employees will continue to be fired.
Yeah, I not only share your fear, I fully believe, and you're giving them the benefit of the doubt. I see this as all part of the plan to create the crisis, make things worse, so that they can privatize and they can profitize off of it. Because it's about getting, at the end of it, it's not about caring for veterans. It's not about a system that's going to be, helpful. It's about money. And I hate taking it down to the lowest common denominator, but you look at all of the moves that they've made, it just seems to me about, hey, how much can we steal from this?
Yeah, well, it's sort of troubling. I like to think of it as sort of like the Pentagonization of the VA, right? Like there's so many private interests bidding for contracts at the Pentagon, and that is often steering policy, right? Like the Pentagon and the DoD will make weapon systems that they don't need. They'll sort of just like appeal to the private interest and throw money their way when it doesn't make good policy sense. That's now happening at the VA. Hospital executives and private healthcare companies see this huge pot of money, and they're going after it pretty aggressively. I mean, you can look in the Federal Lobbying Disclosure Database and see all the major players working on veterans legislation now. And it appears that Congress will probably soon pass new laws that make it much easier for veterans to seek care in the private sector. Again, that was also something available before the Phoenix scandal, but since that scandal came about, politicians on both sides of the aisle have really been pushing hard to steer veterans away from the VA, despite the fact that veterans by and large still really appreciate the care they get. I mean, the RAND report has published 2 studies in the last 2 months showing that VA care still remains better than the private sector.
No, and look, I've talked to veterans who have said, don't take it away. I mean, it's for their needs, it meets their needs, especially if they're somewhere near. I mean, there are some problems if you live in rural areas where you have to drive a distance to get that, and that's things that can be worked out. But to trash the whole system, which is very popular with veterans, is a bad idea simply because, well, there's money to be had is kind of crazy to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of the folks, this accountability law was passed on a broad bipartisan basis. In fact, it passed out of the Senate on a voice vote. And I think that politicians on both sides of the aisle thought this would accomplish some good at the VA. There are folks at the VA who should not be there, and some of them have been able to evade punishment, but there should have been some sort of oversight, some greater oversight over this law's implementation to ensure that it wasn't exploited so as to punish low-level employees. I mean, often, I heard stories in my reporting just about like a manager who was frustrated or had a personal gripe with someone and used the law and the tools it provided to punish them basically just from, a personal grievance.
Because they could.
Yeah. So there needs to be, I believe, some new oversight of how this law is implemented, and we'll see if that happens. It's sort of unclear right now. I mean, I think after the midterms, depending on what happens, there may be some action, but there is a bipartisan group of lawmakers in Congress now mulling some changes. Whether those changes will actually move through the committee process and onto the floor of the House or the Senate, I doubt it. But
Yeah, and
we'll see.
We'll see. But here's the thing, and this should be a nonpartisan issue. I mean, we sent these people into harm's way. We sent these folks off to be harmed, mentally, physically, whatever. We should be taking care of them. We should be allocating the resources, and they should have been allocated from the beginning, because this isn't new. This has been going on for generations now, but especially Bush era forward. It just seems to me that we're trying to. It seems like they're trying to create an appearance that they're fixing the problem by beating up on those least able to actually do anything, just so they can say, see, look, we got rid of 1,200 people, these bad employees. It's still not making things any better.
No, not at all. Not at all. Yeah, and I mean, the VA, as you allude to, has not been funded at the proper level since we went into Iraq. I mean, this is the longest war in American history, and the VA budget has increased, yes, but not nearly to the levels it should be to address the extensive needs of veterans coming back with war-borne injuries and trauma. So we do owe it to our veterans to support them, to give them the proper health care when they return, and to reacclimate them back into society. And I think that work is still being done, and a lot of it's really great work. But there does need to be more support for veterans who live in rural parts of the country and who can't easily access VA services.
Right. And the other part of this, the reason I'm so dead set against the idea of privatizing the VA, and I know a lot of people say, no, we're gonna get them to go to their local hospital. The VA has institutional knowledge of war injuries, of things that are specific to veterans, the type of chemicals they may have been exposed to, the type of environments they were exposed to. That institutional knowledge doesn't exist in the current healthcare system, and it would take way too long, in my view, for it to permeate down to your local hospital, if it ever did. So for me, the idea of having this separate and having the institutional knowledge is what's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, the RAND Corporation did a study on New York State healthcare options for veterans and found that only 2% of New York State hospitals were prepared to receive a veteran and treat, the myriad ailments that a veteran can have. And also, as you point out, very few physicians outside the VA sort of are aware of the culture of the military, are able to sort of treat the veteran in that unique way that the VA can.
So what we end up with is a bunch of veterans on drugs. Even worse, because the first thing they're going to do is, well, we don't know what to do with them, drug them up. Or at least that's my opinion on it. But I think what you've done, great work. I hope people will catch on to this, pay attention, and maybe push their legislators, maybe push their senators towards addressing the real problems, which in my view is getting enough people and enough resources into the VA and not these gimmicky things. But great work over there. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Rick. Have a good one.
Jasper, good stuff. If you want to check out Jasper Craven's article, we'll get a link at thericksmithshow.com, or we'll get it out on Twitter. Follow us at Rick Smith Show. Tell us what you think. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break, right back after this. Stick around and listen to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. Do you ever enjoy a cold beer after a long day's work? Well, if you were a worker in the United States from 1920 to 1933, you would have to break the law to down a brew. And on this day in labor history, the year was 1932. That was the day that massive demonstrations for the re-legalization of beer were held in New York City and Detroit. Prohibition had lasted for more than a decade. The outcry for the repeal of the alcohol ban was growing. Mayor Jimmy Walker of New York City decided to hold a parade to support what he called beer for taxation. Mayor Walker argued that allowing the sale of beer would provide more taxes for the federal coffers. Getting beer brewing up and running again would also help cut unemployment, a serious issue in the midst of the Great Depression. 100,000 people answered the mayor's call and marched in the streets for beer. That same day in Detroit, 40,000 marched for beer. Many in the crowd were from the city's working class. One float in the Detroit parade bore a sign that read, "Beer," in giant letters. Around the one-word demand was printed the words farmers, masons, coopers, tinsmiths, carpenters, brewers, and porters. Workers of all types wanted their beer back. Participants in the parade chanted, "Who wants beer? We do!" A little less than a year later, the government answered their call and ended prohibition.
1, 2, 3. Bear, 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 gently bear, bear, bear.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
1, 2, 3. Bear, 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 gently bear, bear, bear. A long time ago, way back in
Your proud defender of the working class majority, Rick Smith.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. Questions, comments, something on your mind, you can email me, rick at thericksmithshow.com. So on Friday, President Trump vowed that he was going to bring soaring drug prices back down to earth. And you go, great, about time. You know, maybe it's something we should have been doing. Oh, I don't know, back, during the Bush years when we said government was never going to negotiate for prescription drugs for Medicare patients. Maybe that would have been a good time. But hey, it's about time. And I'm thrilled that he is talking about it. And you say, but how are you going to do it there, Donnie? How's this going to work? And of course, it's competition. Competition is going to bring drug prices down. Duh. And you go, okay, explain what that looks like. Is the government going to negotiate for drug prices? Are we going to actually use the power of our buying and our purchasing power? Are we going to actually use that to negotiate for lower drug prices like other countries do? Are we going to do that, Donnie? Of course not. Come on. What we're going to do, though, is we're going to make drug makers disclose their prices on TV. Yeah, that's it. That's part of the plan. When they advertise, as they're rambling through really fast at the end of the commercial about all of the things that are going to kill you, and how you could possibly get rid of the red blemishes on your forehead with this amazing drug that will cause all kinds of these horrible side effects, disfiguration, birth defects, death, all of this. But hey, you'll get rid of that blemish on your forehead, and you'll look fabulous. Now in that blather at the end will be how much they're going to try, how much the drug will cost. And I'm like, how exactly is that going to bring the costs down? Because understand, these people aren't embarrassed by what they're charging for drugs. Come on. There would have to be some shame limit there. There's not. And, you have to love his rhetoric. Because, look, everyone hates the profiteering marauders who are gouging us blind. They do. Everyone does. Everyone hates the pharmaceutical companies who are wildly profiting off of our illnesses. And also, doing a great job of pushing it upon us, spending, millions of dollars on lobbyists. And in Trump's little spiel on Friday, he was very accurate. The pharmaceutical company is one of the biggest lobbyists industries in the country, well beyond tobacco, well beyond oil, well beyond all of that. So they've got their hands in every legislator, one way or another. But here's the thing. You've got Trump's head of HHS, Health and Human Services, is Alex Azar, who really, if you remember Trump during the campaign, he was all about negotiating with the drug companies. Alex Azar, a former pharmaceutical company CEO, who even Trump said, he knows all about gouging. Yeah, let's put him in charge. Even he knew this. He's successfully moved Trump off of what I argue would really lower drug prices, and that's governments negotiating directly with the drug companies because of our buying power. Having Medicare buy in large numbers. Instead of going to the local CVS or the local Walgreens or the local Rite Aid or the local whatever, you get your prescription drugs through a Medicaid approved, provider that says, okay, you know what, this is our overhead. We're not paying CEOs hundreds of millions of dollars. We're not paying for all of this other stuff. We're going to limit costs by directly from Medicare, Medicaid, right to the patients. That seems rational and reasonable. That's not what's going to happen. We're just going to say on TV how much your drug's going to cost, which is going to do one of two things. It's either going to have companies read it really fast at the end of their commercial, really, really fast, so that you never hear it. Or they're just never going to advertise. So it's really just kind of blow by and have no shame, or just stop advertising on TV. And I honestly don't know how much television advertising actually works in the drug world. It might. I mean, I'm sure there's some hypochondriacs out there going, oh yeah, Propecia, it might be right for me, or because look at Donald Trump's hair. Who knows? Every time I've gone to the doctor and I've said, hey, could this be right for me? It was in a mocking way. I mean, the one time I did it, it was for a drug that helped women go to the bathroom less. So I asked my doctor, would this be right for me? And he's like, of course not. I go, well, they told me on TV to ask. So I'm here. I had to ask. I got to ask a question. So there's my question. So there you go. That's where we're going to go. So there were a couple of things that caught my attention. Look, I'm all in favor of lowering prescription drug costs for everybody, especially for seniors, because they take the majority of them. I'm all in favor of our government, in one way or another, being competitive and demanding lower prices. That's not going to happen. I'm all in favor of that. All in favor of, okay, if you're going to advertise, sure, why not? Put the price on there. These people are shameless anyway. It's not going to matter. And there are some other things that you go, I don't know. Will they work? Will they not? Doubt it. And if they do, it's going to be marginal at best. The one thing that I did find really interesting in his spiel, and this is what Republicans do masterfully, play the victim card. I mean, they are, it's really remarkable how the victim card always comes out. And what I'm talking about is Trump went on this rant about how other countries are negotiating for lower drug prices and how that's harming us as Americans because we have to pay the difference for them. Now, I understand. I don't quite get it. Again, these are people who talk about the free market, the invisible hand. This is, stay out of business, let business make deals. The pharmaceutical industry is making all of these deals with countries across the globe. And they're making these deals for medication pennies on the dollar because they think they're selling so many pills, so much volume, that they're going to make money off of it. And they do. I would argue they're just not making as much as they want. So the Trump argument here, and you got to love this. You got to love this because it's going to give the dim and the simple somewhere to be upset at. Those Brits, they get lower drug prices and I'm having to pay for it. I mean, it's beautiful. It's terrific rhetoric. Not really steeped in reality, but it's beautiful because, now we're going to cry that line. Understand, the pharmaceutical companies are driven solely by profit motive. Shareholders are demanding higher profits. They're for-profit corporations. They have to make money to stay in business. Yes, but they also have to please their shareholders. And their shareholders always want double-digit returns. Drug companies have been good investments. So what you've got is you've got Trump on this rant telling the pharmaceutical companies, you're going to have to charge other countries more because we're tired of paying higher drug prices. And I'm tired of paying higher drug prices too. But I find it interesting that he's playing the victim card. Understand, these companies are negotiated with these. And again, I want to highlight in the openness of free markets, because they don't have to sell their products to these countries. They don't have to. There's no law. Honestly and truthfully, in dealing with these foreign governments, it is truly a free market. And I define it a free market as, from the pharmaceutical company's point of view, it is a free market. They can choose to not sell their drugs to those countries. They can. If they're going to lose money, it would be stupid to sell those drugs. So they could choose in their free market to abstain from participating in that market. They could do that really simply. But they choose not to. Why? Because I argue that they're making profit off of those markets, just not as much as they're making here. They've been gouging us for years. They've been getting away with it. And now we've found a new straw man. We found another person to blame, to point the finger at. It's those people over there. We're paying for them. So it's not just the poor and downtrodden in this country. No. It's not just those people here. It's those people there. I mean, think about how masterful that kind of rhetoric is, to get the dim and the simple to go, yeah, we're paying for them. It's beautiful. Instead of talking about, hey, how do we do what other countries are doing well, which is driving a harder bargain with these companies. We're not doing that. We're not using the power of Medicare and Medicaid to negotiate for prescription drugs. They're not doing that. That would have been, in my view, job one. You know what? Screw prescription Part D. We are, without question, we are going to pursue lower prices. And if you want to sell in our market, that's it. And if you don't, we start clawing back some of our R&D money. At some point, we have to be cognizant that we're getting screwed. And look, the one thing that I do kind of agree with is making generics available sooner, because generics are going to be much cheaper. But again, the pharmaceutical industry is going to cry and whine and complain and all that they're not making profits. And again, you're going to get politicians going, oh no, we got to subsidize it and all that. It's coming. But at the end of it, we should be pushing to negotiate for those drugs, driving a hard bargain. It makes no sense to me that in Canada you can buy the same prescription drug for half or less than half than you could buy something here, the exact same pill made in the same factory, put in a similar bottle. And as I was watching Trump's spiel along with Alex Azar's spiel, I couldn't help but we got the best bottles. We got the best childproof caps. We're gonna get clear bottles. Clear bottles are gonna be great. It's around the edges, and that's what this is to me. This is all just appearing to do something while really not. Anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you think his plan is a good idea? Is it a good plan? Is it a plan at all? Or is it just more finger pointing and more victimhood? You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com, or share your thoughts, 1-888-520-RICK, 1-888-520-7425. Quick break. Right back.
When the kids are united, they can never be defined as yesterday. There's a brand new sham today.
Uncovering the con in conservatism. Rick Smith.
From Boston, Massachusetts, I'm Luke Vargas with your World in 2 Minutes. In a possible sign of warming relations between Israel and Russia, the Kremlin has backed off plans to send advanced anti-aircraft missile systems to Syria, a threat Russia made last month following U.S. airstrikes on chemical weapons facilities belonging to the Assad government. A Russian government spokesperson said Friday that the Assad government has everything it needs, and and that the S-300 surface-to-air missiles weren't needed after all. The same spokesperson denied the timing of that announcement had anything to do with the visit to Russia by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu this week. But in contrast to the U.S., which has only staged 2 high-profile attacks on the Assad government, Israeli jets have repeatedly launched strikes within Syria and have been targeting Iranian militia positions within the country in recent days. And French Finance Minister Bruno Le Maire said Friday that European parties to the Iran nuclear deal plan to take up legislation at the European Commission to prevent the imposition of sanctions on Iran, so long as the country continues to abide by the 2015 nuclear deal.
Nous voulons être des vassaux.
In heated remarks in a radio interview on Friday, Le Maire said Europe deserves the same economic sovereignty the U.S. endows to itself, and he said Europe shouldn't be a vassal to the United States, forced to obey whatever decisions are made in Washington. Le Maire added that a host of major French businesses, including the drug maker Sanofi, food conglomerate Danone, and car maker Peugeot, could each come under fire as a result of reimposed U.S. sanctions, and he said he'd reached out to U.S. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin to try and secure exemptions to allow those companies to keep on doing business. Trump administration officials have thus far dodged questions about the extent to which Washington is willing to punish American allies and foreign companies for continuing to trade with Iran in accordance with the nuclear deal. Luke Vargas, Boston, Massachusetts.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2.
Waving the flag of freedom for people, not corporations. Rick Smith.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. Interesting, funny quote over the weekend. And it's one of those things where you go, are you just dumb? Or are you willfully ignorant? Or is it just plain stupidity? I don't know. I'm hoping it's just dumb. I'm hoping it's, just complete ignorance. I hope it's not willful ignorance. I hope it's not, she knows better, but chooses to just be completely ridiculous and dumb. This Tomi Lahren, and every time I hear her voice, it's like fingernails on a chalkboard. But she said this weekend that about immigrants coming into the country, you just don't come into this country with low skills, low education, not understanding the language, and come into our country because someone says it makes them feel nice. This is not what this country is based on. And, I got to the part, with this country, coming to the country with low skills, low education, and not understanding the language. As I read that, I'm going, that is exactly how virtually every immigrant class came into this country. You go back to, you think about your own family lineage. You think about your ancestors who came here, and maybe they were Polish, maybe they were Irish, maybe they were German, maybe they were Italian, maybe they were Scandinavian. Who knows? Maybe they were who knows where they were from. They all came here, didn't know the language, didn't have job skills, didn't have any money. They were broke. They came here and they started off working crummy jobs, living in tenements. All of the problems that you see with every wave of immigration, they've always had. None of this is new, folks. Not new. So to have her come out and say this is either, as I said, either she's just plain dumb and doesn't know the history of our country and doesn't know the history of immigration into our shores, or she's willfully choosing to ignore reality and just being a paid snot. I can't figure it out. Now, I've often believed that a lot of right-wingers, and I've met a number of them over the years, going to different events and different conventions and stuff like that. I often have said that most of them don't believe the pile of steaming you-know-what that comes out of their mouths. It's a job, it's been scripted for them. Here are your talking points. Just spiel along these lines. And for them, it's a job. They got family, kids they got to put through college. Daughter needs braces, whatever. And they go along with it. They don't really believe it wholeheartedly. They tend to come to it because they regurgitate it often enough. So it's kind of like learning by osmosis. And they're okay, this is where we're at. But I don't think most of them, I don't buy that most of them are diehards. But I look at someone like her who, someone told me, well, we read her writings in college and she wasn't that extreme. I don't know. I get the idea that, it's, hey, look at me kind of gig. I get the, it's, who can outrage the outraged. But this is one of those things that make you go, what exactly are you talking about? Because every generation of immigrants into this country started off the same way. They worked exploitable jobs. They worked crummy, low-wage jobs. They lived in horrible conditions, and they wanted better for their kids. And we're seeing the exact same thing. We're seeing the exact same thing today. And we're seeing the exact same kind of anti-immigrant rage that, guess what, we've seen every time you see a large wave of immigration coming into the country. And it's always the same nonsense. Someone sent me a cartoon from 100 years ago. That where the person was, the big giant guy sitting with an America First t-shirt on. And you go, gee, that rhetoric's not new. It just harkens back to a horrible part of our past. And it's one of those things that you just kind of go, at some point, don't we as a society say, maybe we should, I don't know, stop. Maybe understand that we need younger workers especially as we get older, that you're going to need people who are going to wipe your nose. You're going to need people who are going to wipe the other side. You're going to need people who are going to take care of our most vulnerable. Because you look at where we started off this hour. Louisiana, about to kick 37,000 people off the Medicaid rolls. And telling them, hey, you know what? There's no more money for you. You know what's interesting? The majority of those people who are caring for those people are immigrants. Either first or second generation immigrants. Those are who are caring for our most vulnerable. Those are the people who are working for poverty wages. Who are there day and night for these people who are, the woman who's a quadriplegic. Who without those three people who are with her 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, would die. And sadly, we've got and it just seems that we've got a legislative system that don't care. It's all about the dollars that we can hand to Wall Street. It's all about the money that we can feed to the 1%. It's all about the tax breaks we can give to the Koch brothers or Bezos or who knows who. But you know where it's not going? It's not trickling down to the rest of us. Just not happening. And it should anger us. Even more than the Sadler comments, it should anger and frustrate us and tick us off. Just that simple. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Tell me what you're thinking, what your thoughts, something I said got under your skin. I'd love to hear it, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm going to take a quick break. When we come back, Scott Dworkin's going to be here to share some of his thoughts on the latest Cohen debacle, where the money's at, all of that. Quick break, right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Controversial, thought-provoking, opinionated. Rick Smith.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to thericksmithshow.com. If you've missed any portion of the program, you can download the podcast at thericksmithshow.com.
The proud defender of the American dream, Rick Smith.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out our website, thericksmithshow.com. So it turns out, new story out, you got to give Michael Cohen some credit. Great bag man, great con man. Fleecing AT&T, pharmaceutical company Novartis. Fleecing these people out. A Russian oligarch out of $500,000. Evidently couldn't fleece Uber though. Evidently Uber rebuffed Cohen's consulting offer. Despite the promise that he was going to be able to solely share with them Trump's thought process and the insight that he could give them. Again, it comes back to follow the money. Follow the money. And here to talk a little bit about this and whatever else we can bang around, I've asked our good friend Scott Dworkin to come talk with us. Scott, thanks for taking time for us.
Morning, Rick. How are you?
I am good. So what do you think of this? That Uber had such insight that they said, nope, that's okay. Thanks anyway.
I think that they probably realized that it may not be the best PR in the future for them to be coordinating. And they got enough trouble with their former CEO, Travis Kalanick, when he was involved in the advisory board for Trump. So I think that they probably made a smart move. That this is what companies should do, because at the end of the day, it's either extortion or bribery. And if you're a company, this can really, really hurt, and people can lose jobs.
Yeah, I mean, I look at AT&T and the amount of money. First, it came out, it was like I first saw it was like $200,000, and it was $400,000. I guess it's now up to what, $1.2 million. That's
correct. Yeah, I mean, we're getting into the territory. I'm guessing when we're done with the investigations here, we're going to be clearing over $10 million paid to Cohen. And at that point, you're like, okay, you have to have, with these contracts, Cohen's going to have some kind of proof that he did work for him to explain the fact that he wasn't bribed or extorted extorting people. And so he's going to have to provide proof that he actually did work, and I'm guessing he doesn't have that. And him just being like, oh, I got you, like that kind of stuff, he's going to, again, need some kind of documentation to prove that he actually did anything for this money. And if he did not, then that is the proof that he crossed the line, and this was all just a scheme to make money. And in turn, my guess is, as sick as this is right now, from what I see from Michael Avenatti, from Grant Stern, and some other folks that are reporting on it, and have some information or whatever, it looks like Trump was aware, and it looks like Trump made a cut of the money that Cohen made.
So you're saying so just so I get this right, you're saying that his bag man was out there extorting people, and there was a kickback to the boss.
That's what it looks like, right? I would be, just from what I've learned about Trump over the past 2 years, I would be. It's impossible. There's no way that anyone can make money off of Trump without him knowing. He would never let that happen. Never.
So he would have to have condoned this, because I'm with you on this. I can't believe that Cohen would go out and do this on his own. It would be one of the Gambino underlings going out and doing something in the family name that wasn't sanctioned. I just don't see it.
If you think of The Sopranos, he's Paulie. Michael Cohen is Paulie, and so he's more senior. He's worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Like, he can act like he's a dopey kind of dummy. And again, mobsters always do this, the incompetence angle. They don't mind the bad PR and incompetence. But when it comes down to it, these people are sinister and evil. And so what Cohen's doing is beyond anything we've ever seen. I just want to put this in your mind, right? Let's imagine that Valerie Jarrett got paid $10 million or whatever the total ends up being, so for access to Obama. And you can just see in your head, like your head explodes, and it's like, oh, he would be out of office, because we would never want a president in our party to be like that. I mean, so the corruption is so rampant that it's hard for people to keep focus on just this bribery scandal, because this isn't the only one.
Right. So so just to highlight this, because again, I keep getting people going, well, Rick, it's not a big deal. This is how the swamp is. This is what DC is known for. This is modus operandi. There's nothing new here. You're saying that there is.
Yeah, this is beyond. Hiring a lobbyist if you're a corporation is one thing, and there's a lot of good lobbyists that exist in the world. And just like any other profession, there's bad apples that represent it. So there's lobbyists for teachers unions and other labor unions, and
right. But he wasn't. He's not registered as a lobbyist, is he?
No, but what he was doing was basically lobbying. So I think that's where the law is going to come down with the hammer, at least. But so what he was doing is access to Trump. At that point, he qualifies as lobbying, and so he's outside of the White House, and that's why he was.
I get that.
I think he's able to. Yeah.
No, I get that, but this is where the companies, I think, have some responsibility here. If you're hiring a lobbyist, shouldn't you at least make sure that they're a lobbyist?
Oh no, I think people should go to jail from these corporate. No, I think that they were aware that they were buying access to Trump. I don't think that they thought Michael Cohen was going to do anything for him, except for open the door for Trump. But I'm thinking, from what I've seen, Trump met with some of these people before Cohen got paid, right? And so he was in the White House, and he met with like the Novartis CEO, who's no longer there, before he ever got paid, before Cohen actually ever got paid. So my guess is Trump set that up as in, like, go to Cohen. Like, you go to Cohen, and he'll make sure that I take care of you guys. That's how this works.
Now, that would be a major, major crime in my view.
Right, and that's what we're looking at. So the Cohen part of things, it's never happened in Trump's history where anyone's made money off of him without him, A, knowing about it, and B, taking a kickback, ever. And if you do that, if you burn Trump, he will slaughter you. Like, he's never gotten screwed out of money from a person, as in, especially off of him and something he's doing, never, no chance. He has total control at the White House. He's making millions, and you don't think, of course Trump's going to take a kickback. There's no way whatsoever that he didn't. And if he didn't, he took it in a different way, as in, Cohen takes less salary, or they
pay
just
off
have
a porn
deal
star.
in place. Exactly.
Just kind of.
And he was busy. He was in Prague too. And remember, he's involved with the Russia scandal. He helped set up this, or tried to set up this Ukrainian peace plan, with Felix Sater, and it's the list goes on and on. They tried to set up a Trump Tower in Moscow. You could even think of the fact that, they put up front emails, as in, like, you think he's going to contact the press secretary for Putin and act like he doesn't know him in a public email? Like, give me a break. There's so many different scandals that involve Cohen that you cannot count them, on your hands. And so that alone should have ended Trump's presidency. Like, this is beyond the pale. Again, this is one of his most senior advisors, his most trusted counsels, and everything he's been doing is completely illegal, and he should spend the rest of his life in prison.
Right, but here's the thing: will he? Is this where he flips and saves his own skin? Do you see that happening, or as a possibility even?
I don't know what he does, because I think he's trapped like the rat he is. So, like, he right now you got to think, like, how much evidence you have. Okay, so think about it like this: you have to have evidence that there was a criminal act done on the phone line that they were tapping. So you had to basically prove that the president's lawyer is committing crimes on his phone in order to get it tapped. You start there, and then you find out that he intends to destroy evidence. So then you take that information and you force a raid, a joint raid in 3 or 4 different locations, and getting into a safety deposit box, going to his hotel room, his home, and his office, all at the same time. So, there's a coordinated effort. This is not going to happen against the president's lawyer, let alone an attorney. And then you find 16 cell phones there. That obviously is a big clue to making sure that he separates his communications or whatever. But long story short, there is no way whatsoever that Mueller or the FBI would go after and raid the president's lawyer unless they were sure, unless they were 100% sure he committed the crime, he absolutely did it, and we can convict him, open, shut case. We have more than enough evidence. We have him saying this with this guy, and again, the biggest piece of evidence they uncovered from that was the fact that there was a phone call between Cohen and the White House during the time that he was being tapped. So you have all this evidence, and I think this is what's going to wallop them in the head. They can talk all they want. They can talk all day long. That's great. You can have your time in the sun now. But when Mueller gets that evidence out there, when there's audio, when there's video, when that evidence hits, it's going to hit so hard because I'm guessing it's explicit and it's going to be released in a methodical way. So I'm looking forward to that. But that's so they can keep on talking. But when that evidence hits, there's no way they don't have hard, 100% concrete evidence that Cohen's broken the law. No way.
But Scott, it's a witch hunt.
Well, then I'm the witch hunter. Welcome to hell. No, so it's kind of like I'm like, okay, so Mueller's like Vin Diesel, and I'm one of the other guys in the movie. But it was a bad movie, by the way, The Witch Hunter. Anyways, the witch hunt. That's a cool catchphrase, bro. Like that's kind of everything. It's a catchphrase presidency. Like you just sit there and it's like, oh, fake news, folks, fake news. It makes me cringe saying it out loud every time. But like it's just one catchphrase. You fight it like over and over and over and over again, and it's just driving me. It drives everybody nuts, I'm sure.
But here's the thing, and this is what's frustrating to me is, while as you're saying, Mueller's gathering all this information and it's all airtight information. They've gone through these warrants because you're right. Going after a lawyer, let alone the president's lawyer, and doing no-knock raids, and simultaneous raids and all of this stuff. You don't just get warrants willy-nilly for that kind of stuff. Look, against you or me, absolutely. I buy that. You probably don't need a whole lot of evidence. But to go to that level where there's going to be congressional scrutiny, these people crossed the T's, dotted the I's, made sure commas were where they were supposed to be, the whole 9 yards.
Right, and keep in mind, all the payments to Cohen, this is a story that is from November of 2017. Mueller had that information, all this payment information. He had already interviewed the companies at that point in November of 2017. What does he have now? You know what I mean? There's no way that he raids Cohen's office and doesn't think Trump's going to try and fire him. Like, no way. Him and Rosenstein and probably go off, I mean, so I think we are. I think Trump is. There's no way that he gets out of this one. I think this is, and funny enough, we have to thank a couple people, including Stormy Daniels, Michael Avenatti, among others, for pushing some of this stuff out there so that we could find out the truth. Because keep in mind, these corporations would have never told us. Would have never said, oh, yeah, we paid Cohen X amount so that we could, do some work with Trump. Like, no, because the level that they're doing it at is a direct presence of Trump, and there's no way, again, a guy that's employed by Trump, paid by Trump, is making money off of Trump without Trump knowing and is interacting as a representative of Trump for months at a time, in those contracts. There's no way that they're not connecting those dots. And
right.
So again, if there's so many different lanes to different investigations. We're talking about, dozens of different federal investigations into Trump, hundreds of state level investigations into him, his company, and everything he's ever been involved with. Not just Russia. You know what I mean? Like, this is it's all going to come walloping hard. I think it's not going to. I don't think people are they don't want this to last much longer. So we'll see what Mueller comes out with in the next week. But I'm guessing it's going to be evidence soon. That's what's got to happen next is evidence, and then indictments of American co-conspirators.
Right. So what do you say to the argument that they're trying to make now that, well, we couldn't have done anything wrong because, well, AT&T didn't get the merger?
Oh, okay. Well, it's like, I paid for the hitman to kill my wife, but he didn't do it. So I shouldn't go to jail for ordering the hit. Conspiring to obstruct justice is the same as, you can get the same kind of level of prison time as obstructing justice itself. The conspiracy sometimes is worse than the crime. And in this instance, him actually getting paid the money just makes it, a larger felony. But the conspiring, the planning that he had, he had to make presentations and stuff, I'm sure, try and sway like a board of directors in one way with just some bullet points so they had a paper trail. And long story short, I think Cohen's a fraud, and I think America's learning that. And as he gets taken down, as Giuliani and others get taken down, there's not going to be anybody left except Trump for us to uncover and make sure that we bring down, because this is a criminal president, and it affects the United States of America. It affects our security abroad. Things that he's doing are not measured, and it's leading to people dying. Right now, there's dozens of people who have died today on the Gaza-Israeli border, and Kushner and Ivanka are doing an opening like they're changing the world, and people are getting murdered over their decisions. And we're in a bad spot right now, and I think that one of the ways to relieve the pressure is to remove Trump from office. And so hopefully some of this evidence comes out shortly that is more focused on Trump, because he was involved in all this. There's no way that he wasn't involved in any of this. He didn't know about anything that was going on between Cohen, Russia, any of his administrations, excessive spending, and keeping corrupt people in power. He's the worst president that's ever existed in the history of this country, one of the most corrupt politicians that's ever existed in the history of the world, and is just going to get worse. There's no better here, because none of these investigations are going to go away. People are going to get charged. There's going to be more and more people who are indicted and go to jail and turn on Trump or whatever, and eventually it will be too much. And as we come into midterms here, Republicans are going to pay for it, because, again, Trump is a Republican. He's the leader of the Republican Party. He runs that party, just like Obama ran the Democratic Party. And he will take the fall for it, and Congress will take they'll get fired for it in the House and the Senate.
As they should. But so just so we can finish this up, so it's your view that he can't play the I didn't know. I'm just the innocent dolt here. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know that the campaign was had all these ties with all these Russian assets. I didn't know all this money was changing hands. I didn't know all this stuff was going on. And there's a ton of it. So you're saying there's no way possible that he can plead ignorance?
I mean, I would guess that they've talked to probably hundreds of witnesses, and I would guess around, at least a dozen of them would corroborate that Trump was knowledgeable of different scenarios that happen with different things. And that's not even involving the Cohen part of things. So, I think that Mueller's going to have evidence, and so is the FBI, that Trump was knowledgeable. It could be witness testimony. That's most likely, where they have proof that Trump knew because of a piece of evidence or an email that someone sent, and then they got them to flip and testify against him in that capacity. So that, after you get to like 10 people saying, yeah, he knew, over and over again, because remember Papadopoulos, Carter Page, like all these people that were around Trump. You know, a lot of these people have then given up the fact that Trump was not only knowledgeable, he was an architect in a lot of this.
So it's going to be very interesting to see how this all plays itself out, and if he squeals. That's kind of where my mind is. I want to see if the bagman squeals.
I would say that it's I don't know if he has a choice, because it's going to be like, here, we can either make an example out of you and you can serve the rest of your life in prison, or we can you can make a deal and get out of prison earlier. Like, I don't think that there's any other choice. There's no not guilty on, like, you know, whatever the dozens of charges he's probably going to be brought up on. There's no way.
Going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Scott, I appreciate the time. Great stuff. Look forward to talking to you again.
Thanks, Rick.
As always, our good friend Scott Dworkin. You can check out his stuff at the Dworkin Report. Quick break, right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
This is why we fight, why we lie awake. This is why we fight.
Finally, radio for the rest of us. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1913. That was the day Philadelphia longshoremen walked off the job. Led by the industrial workers of the world, the strike was remarkable for its militancy, its industrial unionism, and its interracial organizing. The Wobblies had been fighting to organize workers in the city for years. Unionizing efforts included Amalgamated Local 57, which organized workers across whole industries. Attracted to the IWW's message of interracial unionism, black longshoreman Ben Fletcher joined up readily and soon emerged as an early leader of Local 57 and then Longshoremen's Local 8. In his book, Wobblies on the Waterfront, historian Peter Cole notes the origins of the local started with the striking sugar refinery workers on the banks of the Delaware. Dockers made contact with the IWW during the strike and drew up a list of grievances and demands. And by this day in 1913, 1,500 longshoremen struck for a leveling of the hourly wage for all workers, regardless of skill, shorter hours, and union recognition. They held strike meetings every day and elected a committee of 15 with representatives from every ethnic and racial group. Cole notes this was crucial, given the diversity of the dock's 4,000 workers. More than a third were black, another third were immigrants. The committee included Poles, Jews, blacks, Irish, and others. Strikers took on their employers and also the police. Beatings, intimidation, and arrests of strikers occurred daily and intensified as the ship owners attempted to herd in scabs. 1,200 coal and iron ore handlers joined in on the strike. The port was solidly shut down, and by the end of the month, the shippers were forced to concede to most of the Wobblies' demands. Industrial unionism and interracial solidarity had won the day. Well, here's another one of those things going back to the future. Evidently the Trump Department of Labor. And again, you can't make this stuff up. I mean, you look at the reality of this administration and, you know, we're making payday lenders great again. We're making, we're making dirty air great again. We're making dirty water great again. We're doing all of that stuff. Evidently, Bloomberg Law reported last week, and I can't believe I missed this, but we're making child labor great again. I'm just cutting right to the chase. Evidently, they want to change the requirements that 16 and 17-year-olds not work in hazardous environments. Evidently, they want, according to the Labor Department, They want to get out of the way of a 16 or 17-year-old making their life choices, and they should be able to do what they want. And one of the examples that I saw that was, kind of interesting is that you have to be 18 years old to buy fireworks, but evidently come October, a 16-year-old can work in a dynamite factory. Yeah, because hey, we're gonna make the country great again by having a bunch of 16-year-olds with missing fingers, and we're going back to the days of kids in mines. Not just maybe. I mean, this is one of the areas 16-year-olds will be able to go into. According to Bloomberg, the Labor Department plans to unwind decades-old youth labor protections by allowing teenagers to work longer hours and under some of the nation's most hazardous workplace conditions. And these are, things like, there are tons of jobs, working in the coal mines, making explosives, using the meat cutters. And this is one of those things that, how many meat cutters, missing a finger who are, and they're, been doing this for a generation. Now we're going to have 16-year-old kids dealing with meat cutter, the meat band saws and the choppers and all that. Because, hey, they got small hands. Evidently, bulk trash compactors are going to be doing that. Working in slaughterhouses, working with radioactive material. Because, hey, they're young. They can absorb more than that. Stamping tools, working in machine shops with punch presses and all of that stuff. Because, hey, they're 16. They need to get on with their careers. And this will give them 2 years more experience than that 18-year-old who had to wait. And, oh, by the way, we can put them in competition with their parents who have to do these kind of jobs to support them, and we can lower the wage. How great will that be? How wonderful will it be when we can do all of that? And my favorite part of this, and this is one of the quotes in the Bloomberg Law story that just, I said, what? The department proposes to safely launch more family-sustaining careers by removing current regulatory restrictions on the amount of time that apprentices and student learners may perform hazardous occupation-governed work. So these family-sustaining jobs means we're gonna have to put kids into the mines and do this kind of stuff. They write, the administration plans to frame this as a rule to facilitate closely supervised training that actually enhances safety by allowing youth more practice on machinery than they can operate full-time at 18. So we're going to put them in more dangerous conditions, have them operating more dangerous machinery, under the guise that the more experience they have with it, it's going to make everything safer. Without having, because under current law, you get like an hour of direct supervised ability. There's supposed to be someone right there, walking you through this so that you do get some experience and you ease into it. This, not so much. From what I'm reading, their argument is we're going to make things safer by making things worse. Because currently, as it's pointed out, 16 and 17-year-old apprentices and high school students, they have an hour a day of supervised work in these places, 1 hour a day, as I said. The Trump administration is now saying that they think that's wrong and that the industry should make its own rules. Let that sink in for a minute. Show me an industry that has made its own rules that has benefited people. When, again, you keep coming back to this. When is that a good thing? Now, you couple that with the fact that Labor Secretary Alexandria Acosta announced last week that they were going to be pursuing more apprenticeship programs. And I'm all in favor of union apprenticeship programs. My problem is I know what the company apprenticeship programs look like, and what this appears to me is going to be a giant ripoff. the kleptocracy on steroids, because they aren't the same. You know, I've read reports and I've read studies on the differences between union apprenticeship programs and industry apprenticeship programs. And while the unions, you know, they graduate their apprentices at just a completely, you know, somewhere close to 90% or above. The company ones, the industry ones, nowhere even close to that. Probably not even half of that. It's what it's really about, these apprenticeship programs: getting cheap labor, getting people that they can get subsidies for and pay less. And again, my problem is this idea that the industry will police itself, that they'll keep an eye on themselves, is just plain ridiculous. Anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Should we be putting dangerous tools in the hands of 16-year-olds? Having the one-armed kid with the chainsaw, is that where we should be going? And should we be putting them into these kind of apprenticeship programs? Like, hey, good luck. Good luck on your own there. I sure hope not. rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. When we come back, Bob Ney, Talk Media News, going to be here. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
I'm working all the time. It seems to me I could live my life a lot better than I think I am. I guess that's why they call me the working man.
Making the blue blood see red. The Rick Smith Show.
Get ready, America. Here we go to war. Generalissimo Trump, who's known to guerre as El Donaldo, the mucho macho presidente of the USA, is personally directing the hostilities in this assault on, surprise, the USA. Well, not every American. He's specifically mounting a war on our country's poor people, though he euphemistically calls it a war of liberation. The purpose, he says, is to, quote, free poor families from food stamps, Medicaid, housing assistance, and America's other programs that alleviate poverty. Welfare, he snarls, as he and his militant lieutenants conduct ruthless slash-and-burn forays to defund and destroy such benefits. Their rationale is that eliminating anti-poverty assistance will not only save billions of tax dollars and reduce the federal budget deficit, but it'll also provide a moral incentive for poor people to get jobs and work their way up to prosperity, like El Donaldo and his billionaire buddies did. Actually, Trump inherited a real estate fortune from his daddy Fred, and he expanded it by relying on billions of dollars in government subsidies, tax breaks, and special favors. As for working, most poor people already have jobs, but the miserly pay of those jobs mire them in poverty and drudgery. Even more significant, the vicious, laissez-faire land sense of moral superiority possessed by pampered political elites like Trump lead them to be intentionally cruel to the poor. This is Jim Hightower saying he, his cabinet of multimillionaires, and such coke-headed congressional ideologues as GOP House Speaker Paul Ryan and Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell are so disdainful of the needy that they have a perverse impulse to punish them, as though being poor is not punishment enough. It's said that war is hell, but their war on the poor is truly satanic.
Hightower's commentaries are brought to you by the Hightower Lowdown, the monthly newsletter with Hightower's take on what Wall Street and Washington are up to. For information, visit hightowerlowdown.org.
The most important issues of the day. This is The Rick Smith Show.
Yes, can't wait. Can't wait to get those kids back in the mines. Can't wait for them to be back in the factories. You know, hey, you're 16. They're old enough to get back in the mines, aren't they? You'd think we'd gotten farther than this. You'd think we'd, kind of awakened a little bit. No. In fact, I'm waiting for it to go from the 16-year-olds back in the nines. Let's get those 8 and 9-year-olds. We can tell by second grade whether they're going to be, going to prison or not. Let's get them back in the mines doing that. They got little tiny hands or intricate work. They can do that. Scary stuff. Anyway, let's find out what's going on around the world and in Washington, D.C. Bob Ney, Talk Media News. Bob, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you, Rick. My grandfather was taken out of school, by the way, at 10 years old and taken to work at the glass factory. He worked 63 years there. You had to work 5 years to get a pension. He was forced retired for cataracts and denied a pension because he was 2 years short.
Wow.
Yes, that's a true story down in Blair, Ohio. Yeah, my own grandfather. Imagine that.
So just think of it. Your grandkids are going to be back in the factory as well.
You know, well, not mine. I'm not going to let that happen. But yeah, they're people. I mean, it was just unbelievable. I mean, that's my own grandfather was taken out of school at 10. People, sounds like a fairy tale, but it actually happened.
Yeah, my grandfather made it to 7th grade before he went to shoveling coal off the back of a coal truck to help support the family. Didn't have a choice. It was, there was, and they let him go. Good luck. Know how that worked out for you. Now, fortunately, with a 7th grade education, he did lead a very prosperous life.
Right.
Was a truck driver, for his whole career. Retired with dignity, with a secure pension, with Medicare, Social Security. But that path is long gone.
Sure.
It's just scary stuff to me. And I look at the Trump administration, relaxing those child labor laws, and it's only going to get worse. Because, hey, Bob, the industry, they're going to police themselves.
Yeah, I haven't read this story yet. Now I'm going to have, as soon as I get off with you, I'm going to have to read it.
Yeah, last week Bloomberg Law had a story of how they're going to let 16 and 17-year-olds, work in more hazardous industries because, hey, they should be able to make their choices and get on with their careers, so they can compete with their parents for those, making dynamite. And the one example they gave is, you have to be 18 to buy firecrackers. But, hey, under this new law, you can be 16 and work in a dynamite factory. Wouldn't that be great? All right, so let's move on. What did you think of the weekend? What did you think of the drug prescription drug discussion on Friday? What do you think of the idea that Trump's got that we're going to compete by being victims and claim that we're subsidizing other countries' low drug prices?
Well, I was just talking about drug prices the other day. Obviously, drug prices, because a friend of mine was in shock when I told him that the drug for hepatitis C was $500 in India. The same drug is $55,000 in the United States. And he was in shock over that. And he asked, well, why is that? I said, well, I can give you a variety of answers, but also it's what the market will bear. Now, just because we have to pay more, which is outrageous, by the way.
Right.
Paying $55,000 is outrageous. But just because we have to pay more, the solution isn't to make others pay more. The solution is to do something here about it.
Absolutely agree. But did you see Trump's speech where, we're the victims in this? And I love the victim card. They play it well. Because India only pays $500 for it, we're letting them get off light, evidently.
But of course we aren't, because first of all, if it goes to $55,000, they might sell one set of the 12 treatments you need, first of all. And second of all, again, if it is raised over there, that will do nothing for us, because they're not going to say, oh, well, we're now collecting more money overseas, so we're going to charge you less. That won't happen.
Yeah, it sounds to me like they're just going to try and charge them more. But here again, it's a nice victim card, I think. Because it's got us thinking that, we're already thinking that, we pay for those poor people, those others here at home. But now we're paying for the others everywhere else. It's a brilliant ploy, I think.
Well, it is. I can see where it's, utilizing the mindset that look what they're getting overseas. They're getting a break,
No, they're negotiating, Bob. They're actually using the power of their market to negotiate for lower prices. Why don't we do that?
Well, sure. Because, again, if we, mandate and raise the price on people over there, it doesn't mean it does anything for us. Right. Nothing.
But, I keep going back to what his plan is not what I think should have happened back during the Bush years, which is to use the buying power of Medicare and Medicaid to buy the drugs that we need and negotiate the prices, much like Canada does, much like the UK does. They buy it in bulk. They buy it at lower prices. I don't understand why we don't do that.
Well, there's another thing, too. Hasn't been done under series of presidents. And if we even go to Barack Obama's time, the first thing that happened in the health care bill was the pharmaceuticals got a walk.
Yep.
That's the first thing that happened. Rahm Emanuel, who's now the mayor of Chicago, he was chief of staff, and he knows the system. I served with him. And the first thing that happened was, boom, okay, fine, you guys are out of it. Then what did you see? You saw the pharmaceutical companies paying for health care ads because, of course, they didn't care what came out, whether it was perfect or not, as long as they weren't in it. I've never seen anybody with such massive power. They really talk about transcending politics. They sure can.
Sure. No, I mean, and even Trump said nobody lobbies at the rate that the pharmaceutical industry. And this is where the one nut in his whole spiel was accurate. They spend more money than any industry on lobbying Congress. And as you've said, both sides of the aisle, they know no partisanship.
Right.
They don't care if it's blue or red. All they care about is green.
Right. Exactly.
As long as they can fleece us, that's what they're doing. So do you have any hope for his plan? I mean, I do find it ironic that the guy who's talking about lowering drug prices was a former CEO of a pharmaceutical company who, once he's gone from HHS, will probably going back to being a CEO of a pharmaceutical company. Do you have any hope in their plan?
No. You mean to lower the cost?
Right.
No.
All right.
I don't think it's going to happen. No.
All right. Well, not surprised there. Let's move on. Did you see the story this morning that evidently Uber chose not to give Michael Cohen any money because they thought it was going to be a scam? Any thoughts?
No, I didn't. I have not. I've had so many international stories. I have not seen that.
I mean, it's amazing to me. I mean, I guess they figured out it would be bad press if it ever got out that they were paying the president's bag man. Let me ask you about the other big one. Evidently, today we're opening up a new embassy in Jerusalem, moving it from Tel Aviv. The president's got two of his top religious advisors, John Hagee, the crazy guy from Ohio, which you can share thoughts if you like him or not, and also this Richard Jeffers. I can never pronounce his name. Jeffress, I think, the anti-gay guy.
Jeffries. He's the guy on Fox, right?
Yes.
Because he's gotten in trouble with it. Now Mitt Romney is out after him. I know. I saw a story on that today.
Yeah, there is that. The guy who said that, abortion caused 9/11, and of course, what Romney tweeted out today was that this Jeffress guy says you can't be saved by being a Jew, and that Mormonism is heresy from the pit of hell, evidently. So those are the two religious leaders that we sent to give the benediction and the prayer at the opening of our embassy. Do you think that could upset anybody?
It might. I watched. I know people got upset with Jeffries. He's been. A lot of people have went after him, and like I said, including I think today Mitt Romney did went after him. The ceremony's going on as we speak. By the way, for the switching of the embassies. Ironically, the actual bill to switch our embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem was passed October the 24th at 6:07 p.m. in 1995, and has never been carried out. And it was one of those wink and nod bills. People voted for it. Presidents campaigned on it, and then nobody particularly did it. And now Trump has done it. It's to be seen yet what ramifications it'll have in trying to have the peace process continue. I don't know what'll particularly happen on that peace process being going back and forth so many periods of time.
I mean, you throw all this together, and again, you look at this, you look at pulling out of the Iran deal. It just seems like everything that you shouldn't be doing, this guy's doing. I wonder as a kid if he hit bees nest with sticks. I mean, I don't know.
The Iran deal, at least on the embassy deal, I mean, the Congress by a overwhelming 373 votes in the House said move it. And everybody knew it wasn't really going to move. And then, like I said, presidents campaigned on it, and then they didn't do it. But I don't think it's the end of the peace process. It's a definite bump in it. They can still negotiate a two-party state. The thing that worries me more in the areas of problems for us, Rick, is the whole Iran situation, because now president has dispatched Pompeo, who was our CIA director, now Secretary of State, to go talk to the Arab nations like Saudi Arabia and Bahrain and say, okay, we want you to cozy up to Qatar because Qatar is pro-Iranian, and we want you all to have a combined force to go after Iran. The president is starting to become, I think, obsessed with Iran, and we all know who is in the White House National Security Agency, crazy John Bolton. And I think that's where all this is coming from, Rick. It wasn't just, the president was not for the Iran deal. I understand that. But have you noticed how it has ratcheted up? Everything about Iran has ratcheted up in the last 2 or 3 weeks.
No,
Bolton got there.
Yeah, I'm worried that we're heading for real troubled waters.
Right, and this could be a real major problem with Iran in Syria when they do fight ISIS. Now, I'm not saying the Iranian regime is a picnic. Of course it's not. But there's a lot of Iranians that do want, a true democracy in Iran, but the way to get it is not to have some type of war. And I just think with Bolton in the White House that it's a powder keg because he is just out front called for the bombing of Iran, and he's also called for the preventative bombing of North Korea.
Yay. I mean, that's all I can think of is yay. Look what we're going to have. And look, my kids are growing up, and my son's 12, my daughter's 15. This is sadly gonna hit them as well. We start bombing stuff, and we start as Larry Korb, the guy who's the a senior fellow at the Center for American Progress, told me a couple of years ago. If you thought Iraq was fun, wait till we go into Iran. They actually have a functional military.
It would be horrible, absolutely horrible.
Just terrible. And you've to have these cheerleaders like Bolton. And I would say you want to go, we'll put you first. You lead the first folks right in there.
Right. Yeah.
Scary.
Bolton, I think Bolton's dangerous.
No, you think? Mm-hmm. Even the neocons are going, wow, he's crazy.
Right, exactly.
Just nuts. And finally, I wanted to get your thoughts on the Supreme Court case today. 7-2 to decision. I got to be honest, I did not think that there could possibly be a 7-2 decision out of this Supreme Court. But evidently, sports betting across the U.S. will now be legal. They've ruled the Professional and Amateur Sports Protection Act that was passed by Congress back in 1992 as unconstitutional, which means, yay, we get to make college sports even more corrupt.
Yeah, there'll be a lot of betting now. I was surprised. I was surprised at the decision. I mean, the overwhelming support for it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm shocked. The two dissenting were the women, RBG and Sonia Sotomayor. Kagan and the other one went with the 5 conservatives.
Right, because this court then will have struck down that federal law. That federal law stopped gambling on football, basketball, baseball, and other sports in most states. So now this is it's a state's decision now, quote, but it'll give states the right to legalize betting on sports. And
they're all going to do it because they see it as a cheap, as a quick, revenue generator. Mm-hmm. Those sin taxes, we tend to like those. Raise tobacco and alcohol taxes, and this one will be right there. I mean, because everybody now is doing, casino gambling. I mean, they're talking about putting a kind of a mini casino in my small town, and you go, really? Do we need that?
Right.
Answer no. There you go. All right, so there you go. So we can have alcohol addiction and now gambling addiction everywhere. Good stuff.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to America of the future. We'll be bombing everything and gambling and drunken and all of that. Good stuff. Bob, I appreciate the time, man.
Thank you.
Our good friend Bob Ney, Talk Media News. Yeah, seriously. I mean, in my small little community, they want to put a casino, which would just be evidently the shopping mall is done. So one of the proposed places is put the casino in the shopping mall, and generate some revenue without actually thinking of it. I've had this conversation with a couple of people who, when my wife told me that this was going to happen or was being proposed, I'm like, no, it's a bad idea because of, one, you just start with traffic. It's going to increase the horrible traffic that's already built up around here. You're going to need more police protection, which means this is going to be even more of a police state, because my little community, they even have a police tank. So that's going to get worse. Then you add in the element that you bring in to that kind of environment with more drinking and more drug abuse. And of course, let's get into gambling addictions and all of that stuff. And here's the thing. There's just a casino a half an hour from here. So you don't really need one here. I mean, is it one of those things that, I got to be 5 minutes away? There's one already down the road. So by saturating, this, you're just making either the problem bigger, or you're just stealing from other areas. I mean, it's crazy. And then, because people are saying, well, it'll bring in new people. I go, no, we're going to have the same people coming in. Because the car shows are big where I live. And they go, well, the car show people will go there all the time. I go, yeah, but if they're going there, they're not going to all of these other places that are currently there. You're talking about a change in our economy. And look, it's a college town. How many parents are going to want to send their kids to a gambling town? Just kind of a thought. Personally, I think all of the betting things, bad idea, but it is where we are going. So interesting times ahead. Quick break, right back to wrap things up. Stick around. You listen to The Rick Smith Show.
Radio of, for, and by we the working people. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. You ever enjoy a cold beer after a long day's work? Well, if you were a worker in the United States from 1920 to 1933, you would have to break the law to down a brew. And on this day in labor history, the year was 1932. That was the day that massive demonstrations for the re-legalization of beer were held in New York City and Detroit. Prohibition had lasted for more than a decade. The outcry for the repeal of the alcohol ban was growing. Mayor Jimmy Walker of New York City decided to hold a parade to support what he called beer for taxation. Mayor Walker argued that allowing the sale of beer would provide more taxes for the federal coffers. Getting beer brewing up and running again would also help cut unemployment, a serious issue in the midst of the Great Depression. 100,000 people answered the mayor's call and marched in the streets for beer. That same day in Detroit, 40,000 marched for beer. Many in the crowd were from the city's working class. One float in the Detroit parade bore a sign that read, "Beer," in giant letters. Around the one-word demand was printed the words farmers, masons, coopers, tinsmiths, carpenters, brewers, and porters. Workers of all types wanted their beer back. Participants in the parade chanted, "Who wants beer? We do!" A little less than a year later, the government answered their call and ended prohibition.
1, 2, 3. Bear, 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 gently bear, bear, bear.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
1, 2, 3. Bear, 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 gently bear, bear, bear. A long time ago, way back in
From Boston, Massachusetts, I'm Luke Vargas with your World in 2 Minutes. In a possible sign of warming relations between Israel and Russia, the Kremlin has backed off plans to send advanced anti-aircraft missile systems to Syria, a threat Russia made last month following U.S. airstrikes on chemical weapons facilities belonging to the Assad government. A Russian government spokesperson said Friday that the Assad government has everything it needs and that the S-300 surface-to-air missiles weren't needed after all. The same spokesperson denied the timing of that announcement had anything to do with the visit to Russia by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu this week. But in contrast to the U.S., which has only staged 2 high-profile attacks on the Assad government, Israeli jets have repeatedly launched strikes within Syria and have been targeting Iranian militia positions within the country in recent days. And French Finance Minister Bruno Le Maire said Friday that European parties to the Iran nuclear deal plan to take up legislation at the European Commission to prevent the imposition of sanctions on Iran, so long as the country continues to abide by the 2015 nuclear deal.
Nous voulons être des vassaux.
In heated remarks in a radio interview on Friday, Le Maire said Europe deserves the same economic sovereignty the U.S. endows to itself, and he said Europe shouldn't be a vassal to the United States, forced to obey whatever decisions are made in Washington. Le Maire added that a host of major French businesses, including the drug maker Sanofi, food conglomerate Danone, and car maker Peugeot, could each come under fire as a result of reimposed U.S. sanctions, and he said he'd reached out to U.S. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin to try and secure exemptions to allow those companies to keep on doing business. Trump administration officials have thus far dodged questions about the extent to which Washington is willing to punish American allies and foreign companies for continuing to trade with Iran in accordance with the nuclear deal. Luke Vargas, Boston, Massachusetts.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
To this battle, take my Union gun. Gonna end this world of slavery, for this war is one you're bound to lose. You fascists are bound to lose.
So, billionaire Betsy DeVos. Evidently, on Sunday, the New York Times reported that billionaire Betsy has effectively killed investigations into the for-profit college industry. Because you may remember, at the end of the Obama term, there were a bunch of investigations of these predatory private for-profit corporations who were running private for-profit colleges, and I hate calling them that, diploma mills, whatever, that were basically fleecing people out of tons of money. And by people, I mean we, the taxpayer, because overwhelmingly money from the GI Bill is what went into it. Evidently, billionaire Betsy has effectively killed the investigation into that, and there will be no holding to account any of those folks. And why is it not surprising? Well, I mean, she's been one who's a big promoter of these schemes, someone who's made money off of this stuff, and not that it matters to her. It's the ideology, and they're looking at DeVry, which DeVry University, which is now known as Adtalem Global Education, which I had never heard of. I guess they've now given up the whole idea that they're a university. And now they're just a global education. Adtalem, which I have no idea what it means, but evidently they're going to be the ones who just, it's over. We're not locking anybody up. Paid a little fine. I guess they agreed to a settlement in 2016 of about $100 million with the Federal Trade Commission. But I guess we're not going to go any further. And again, these are people that are part of billionaire Betsy's team. These are people who, they need a job. So, billionaire Betsy brought them in because, hey, we can do wonders with education. So now we can turn, and this is what I've been saying for a long time, higher education's already gone for a good portion of places. Unless you get into the good universities or, really accredited ones, all of the shenanigans things are still out there. They want to do to K through 12 what they've been able to get away with in the higher ed world. That's the simple part of this, and it's angering, it's scary, it's frustrating, but guess what? It's what they've gotten away with. Sad stuff. Anyway, if you missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you go to get the podcast, the Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Together, we can make America better. Email rick@thericksmithshow.com or interact with us anytime at thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
It's color like the tide of flood beneath the lunar sway.